going backwards now, you've written your first book.
Yes, I would love, if I could, to read an excerpt from that book here. Thank you. If that person in the back row would put their phone away, I'll be happy to do that. Thank you very much. See, people, they have the glow of the screens on their faces, and I think they forget that in a darkened room, other people can see it.
Right.
But they can.
Right. And they're usually ugly. And we don't mind seeing people, like if you're a solid 10, light up the phone.
If attractive people want to shine a light glow on their faces, that of course is always welcome.
Always welcome.
All right, this is from my debut novel. It's called Murder in the Duty Free. All of my books will take place in a different airport. This one takes place in Heathrow Airport in London. Murder in the Duty Free, a Charlie Sullenberger mystery. That's the name of my character. Lock the gates of this duty-free shop, bellowed the security officer. He then turned, fidgeting nervously, to ask of the man behind him, right? Retired airline pilot Charles Sullenberger nodded. He was the man the security officer was addressing in the nervous fashion previously described. Stillman looked around at the motley assemblage before him, lurking in perfume aisles, partially obscured by giant Swiss triangular chocolates, trying to blend in with displays of expensive and impossibly chunky watches. What a bunch of true murder suspects they are, he thought internally.
I don't know that you need to say thought internally.
Well, not anymore, I just said it.
Fair enough.
He appraised each one of them coolly, not unlike an appraiser on the popular television program Antiques Roadshow. Except these people were not brought to him by simple country people hoping to profit from a departed relative's hoarding sickness. No, these people were brought before him by the crime of murder. First, he looked at Mrs. Fortescue, the elderly widow taking one last trip around the world in honor of her late husband. They were avid travelers until Mr. Fortescue died under mysterious circumstances involving an onion. Mrs. Fortescue, Stillman said gently, my condolences on your husband's unfortunate onion side. Mrs. Fortescue gasped in that sickening, wet way old ladies do. But Captain Sullenberger, she burbled agedly. How did you know my husband killed himself attempting to swallow an entire onion? Stillman smiled in a non-patronizing way. In flight school, we were trained to recognize every different variety of grief. For the purposes of flight safety. Some griefs, like losing a spouse to a car crusher, can cause the sad person to rush the cockpit. But you're not going to hurt anyone. You're too busy fearing it was your fault your husband misjudged the width of his throat. The withered husk broke into tears. I was always complimenting him on his wide throat hole. Stillman spoke a little louder to be heard over the sad noise. And so, you could not be the murderer. The retired pilot then cast his gaze upon the man in the tweed suit. Professor Grady Fallows was perspiring profusely, whether out of nervousness or an ill-advised sartorial selection, or both. Stillman advanced on the damp academic. Professor, you hated the deceased for taking too long at the water fountain. The mousy schoolman's eyes darted about crazily. Well, he was taking forever to fill up his blasted reusable bottle, and all I needed was a simple mouthful of water to take my nerve pill. Stillman smiled a smile as thin as his patience for the impatient. Characters like the professor reminded him of the stories he'd hear of people hovering by the belt barrier pre-flight, standing in the way well before their boarding zone had been called. He could sometimes see them through the cockpit's windshield if the parked plane were angled in such a way that afforded a glimpse into the airport. You're no killer, Stillman sighed. You're impatient but cowardly. You'd never have the nerve to kill a man in a public place, much less safely land 200 passengers on the surface of the lava pooled in the mouth of an active volcano. That's one of the legends of this character, is that he's done that.
It's very similar to your own story.
It's so, I mean, you write what you know. All assembled forgave Stillman this self-congratulatory reference. Stillman then wheeled on the final suspect, a large Canadian goose. "J'accuse," Stillman barked, pointing a steady finger at the filthy creature. The guilty bird honked out some protestation of innocence in its offensively cacophonous tongue, but it was too late. The murder had been solved. Another case closed by retired airline pilot Charlie Sullenberger, who was a hero pilot who now solved murders that take place exclusively in airports. Thank you. There's also an epilogue I have yet to write where Stillman kills the goose and eats it for dinner.
How does he kill the goose?
He breaks its neck.
And is that the entirety of the book? Just that?
No, that's the very ending. I like to write the ending first and then start backwards. I always know, I should point out that in all of these books, and it's a bit of a spoiler, the murderer is always a goose.
You hate geese?
I can't stand them.
Because one flew into your engine.
I wish it had just been one.
Oh, that's right. You're a subscriber to the two goose theory?
That's right. I'm a two goose theorist. I think they're acting in concert, and they willfully brought down my plane.
Two suicide goosers.
Okay.
You seem to have no patience for some things and a lot of patience for others.
I feel as if I'm exhibiting an amazing amount of patience for everything.